By accident, she was trapped. The Apache girl never expected a cowboy to save her. The rope hit her wrists before she heard the horses. Naira had been at the creek for no more than 10 minutes. She had gone alone, against her grandmother's warnings, against the old rule that said no woman walks the canyon trail after the sun starts its slide. She had gone anyway because the clay she needed for the ceremonial bowls only settled at that bend in the creek after the morning rush, and the ceremony was 3 days away, and no one else was going to do it. Now her hands were bound behind her, and 2 men she had never seen were dragging her north along the ridge. They were not Apache. They were not anything she recognized. One was wide in the shoulders with a red bandana over his face. The other was thin, tall, and said nothing at all. They spoke to each other in short, clipped sentences she could only partly follow. Words about a ranch, words about a man named Doyle, words about a trade she did not want to understand. She did not cry out. There was no one to hear. The canyon walls rose on both sides, pale gold in the morning light, and she memorized every turn they made. Left at the split rock, right where the dry riverbed forked. Up through the narrow passage the traders called Needle Gap because you could only pass it single file. She was already building the map in her head, already calculating the distance back to her village, already looking for the moment, one moment, when their attention slipped. It did not slip. They camped that night in a shallow basin she did not recognize. The wide one tied her to a scrub oak, and the thin one made a fire too large for a camp that did not want to be found. Amateur, she thought, reckless, these men did not know the land. They were moving through it like it was empty, like it had no memory, like the desert did not watch. She slept in pieces. Each time she woke, she tested the rope. Oak bark was rough enough if she worked her wrists at the right angle. By the time the stars shifted into their late position, she had loosened the outer wrap by almost a full inch. Not enough, not yet. She was still working at it when dawn came gray and flat over the eastern ridge, and the wide man stood up from his bedroll and walked to her and checked the rope without speaking. He tightened it. She kept her face empty. He walked away. The thin one handed her water without looking at her, like she was luggage he had been asked to keep in good condition, and she drank it because she needed to and because dying of thirst helped no one. They moved again with the sun. By midday, the land had changed. The Red Canyon gave way to flat scrub, brown grass, the smell of cattle somewhere to the west. She had heard of this territory, ranching land. White man's land now, the elders said, though it had been Apache land before that, and land without owners before that, and land that did not care about human arguments before any of it. It was at the second creek crossing, when the thin man's horse stepped wrong on the wet stones and the animal lurched sideways, that she first saw him. A rider on a ridge to the south. She almost missed him. He was still the kind of still that means a man is watching and knows how to watch. Dark hat, dark horse, the sun behind him, so she got no face, just the shape, just the stillness. The wide man saw him too. He said one word to the thin man and they moved faster. Naira kept her eyes forward, but something had shifted in the arithmetic of the day. There were 3 variables now where before there had been 2, and in her experience, a third variable was almost never bad for the one who had the least power. She tucked that thought away like the extra inch of slack she had earned in the rope. The rider did not follow, not visibly. But when she looked back once, quickly, under the pretense of adjusting her posture in the saddle, the ridge was empty. The rider was gone. Gone the way a person is gone when they do not want to be seen anymore. The wide man shoved her forward and told her to stop looking. She did. She faced front. She thought about the map in her head. She thought about the rope. She thought about the ceremony 3 days away, and the clay still sitting at the bottom of the creek bend, and her grandmother, who would be counting steps by now, walking the perimeter of the village, watching the trail. She thought about the rider. His stillness had not been the stillness of a man deciding whether to get involved. It was the stillness of a man who had already decided. She did not know his name. She did not know if he was dangerous or kind or somewhere complicated in between. She did not know if he rode for Doyle or against him or entirely apart from both. What she knew was this: the land had a third variable now, and she intended to still be alive when it arrived. The basin opened ahead of them into a wide, flat plain with a cluster of low buildings at its center, a corral, 2 water troughs, a barn with half its roof missing. Home of someone who did not take care of things. Home of someone who expected other people to absorb the costs. She recognized the type. The wide man called out as they crossed the flat, and a figure stepped out of the largest building and stood in the shade of the overhang and watched them come. She could not see his face, but she felt the weight of his attention from 100 yards out. Specific, calculating, the kind of attention that priced things. She straightened her spine. Whatever came next, she would not walk and hunched. She was Naira. She was her grandmother's granddaughter. She had memorized every turn of the trail, and she had earned an inch of slack in that rope, and somewhere behind her on a ridge a man on a dark horse had gone quiet and still, and then disappeared in the exact direction of useful. The ceremony was in 3 days. She had work to do. They called the man Doyle, and up close he was smaller than she expected. That was the thing about men who held power through fear. They borrowed height from the people standing beside them. Doyle had the wide man on his left and the thin man on his right, and 2 more she had not seen before flanking the barn door. And all that borrowed height added up to something that was supposed to feel like a wall. Naira stood at the center of it and waited. Doyle walked around her once slowly, like a man inspecting a horse at auction, and she fixed her eyes on a point past his shoulder and did not move. He stopped in front of her. "She understand English?" he asked the wide man. "Enough," the wide man said. Doyle looked at her. "You're going to help me get something back, something that was taken from me. You do that, you go home." She said nothing. "Your people know where it is," he said. "Something buried, old burial ground north of Needle Gap. My man had a map and your people stopped him before he got there." The burial ground. She understood now what this was. It was not about her at all. She was a tool, a message sent to her village. "Give us what we want or this girl does not come back." The wide man tied her to a post inside the barn and left her there. Through the missing section of roof, she could see sky. Blue-white, hot, the kind of afternoon sky that buzzed with heat and insects and said nothing sympathetic. She tested the rope. Different post. Different knot. The wide man had been more careful this time. She gave herself 20 minutes and then stopped and thought instead. The burial ground they were describing was real. She knew it. She had been there twice with her grandmother, once as a child to learn the prayers and once at 16 to help carry stones for a marker. It held objects of ceremony and record, things that belonged to the memory of her people. It held nothing Doyle had any right to. Whatever his map said, whatever his dead man had told him was buried there. It was a lie or a mistake or the wishful thinking of a man who believed the land owed him something. She was going to have to make sure he never reached it. She heard the creak of the barn door 2 hours after dark. She had been half sleeping in the way she had learned as a child on long hunts, one layer of her mind still turning the problem. The creak brought her fully awake without showing it, her breathing unchanged, her body still. Footsteps. One person, light on their feet, not Doyle, not the wide man. A voice low came from the shadow near the door. "Don't make a sound." Male, youngish, careful. She stayed still. A shape moved through the dark and crouched beside her, and she felt hands working at the rope at her wrists. Skilled hands, quick, no wasted motion. "Name's Cole," the voice said. "I saw them take you at the canyon." The rider. The rope fell away. She brought her hands forward and pressed the feeling back into them, watching the shadow that was Cole. "How many outside?" she asked. A pause. He had not expected her to lead with tactics. She filed that away. "2 on watch, one sleeping near the east fence, Doyle inside," he said. "Thin man is gone, rode out this afternoon, I don't know where." She stood. The blood moved back into her legs. "Horses. 4 in the corral, mine's tied at the north wash, 1/4 mile out." She looked toward the door. "Can you handle the 2 on watch without shooting?" Another pause, longer this time. "You're not going to ask me who I am or why I'm helping you." "Later," she said. "Right now I need to know if you can handle 2 men quietly." He was quiet for a moment in the way someone is quiet when they are recalibrating. Then, "Yes." "Then we go now," she said. "The thin man rode east. Needle Gap is east. He knows where they are taking me and he knows which direction I would run." Cole stood. She could see him better now, her eyes fully adjusted. Late 20s maybe, trail-worn, a face that did not give much away. "You know this land?" she asked. "Some of it." "Then stay behind me." She did not wait for his agreement. She moved to the barn door, checked the gap, watched the position of the guard at the far corner for a full count of 15. Pattern, pace, direction of attention. Cole came up beside her and she held up a hand. He stopped. She counted again. On the guard's 4th step east she went. Flat and low across the open space between the barn and the first corral fence. The scrub grass catching no sound because she placed each foot with the ball first. the way her grandmother had shown her on hunts before she was old enough to carry anything. Cole was behind her and she could hear him, more than she wanted to, but not enough to matter. The first guard passed without turning. The second was the problem. He was stationary, leaning on the water trough, facing the corral, between her and the horses. She stopped behind the fence post and thought. Cole crouched beside her. "I can draw him off," he said. "How?" "Throw something at the east side of the barn, he'll go check." She considered it. "The first guard will hear." First guard is at the far end of the property by now. She had clocked the same thing. She looked at Cole. He was watching her the way someone watches a person they are trying to understand, not the way someone watches a person they are trying to manage. She handed him a small stone from the ground at her feet. He threw it clean and soft against the barn wall, a sound like a bird hitting timber, and the second guard pushed off the trough and walked toward it with his hand on his belt and his attention entirely wrong. She was at the corral gate before he had taken 5 steps. The horses were loose in 40 seconds. Not all of them, not in a way that announced itself. 2, unlatched and pushed gently into the dark with a soft click of her tongue, drifting west on their own like they had decided to on their own account. If Doyle woke and found them gone, he would count horses before he counted people. That would buy time. She and Cole moved north, fast and low, through the scrub. No words. Behind her she heard nothing from the compound, no shout, no alarm, only the desert and the insects and the occasional shift of wind through dry grass. The dark horse was where Cole had said it would be, tied to a mesquite root in the dry wash, stamping lightly at their approach. Naira put her hand flat on its neck and it settled. Cole untied it and looked at her. "I only have one horse." "I know," she said. He looked at the desert around them, then back at her. "North," she shook her head. "West first, then north through the long canyon. It is slower, but the thin man will be watching the fast routes." "You think he's already at Needle Gap?" "I think he's between it and us," she said. "I think he knows his boss sends people ahead when something matters." Cole was quiet a moment. Then he said, "You've dealt with men like Doyle before." "My grandmother has," she said. "She made sure I listened." She took the horse's rein and started walking, and after one beat he fell into step beside her and they moved west together through the dark, the compound shrinking behind them, the canyon waiting ahead. She did not look back, but she thought about the burial ground. The prayers her grandmother had said over those stones. The record of names carved in a way that was not for outsiders, that would mean nothing to a man with a map and a hunger for something he could sell. She thought about the thin man somewhere in the dark ahead of them. And she thought about Cole, who had come quiet into a barn and worked a knot loose and asked nothing in return except whether she was ready to move. She did not know yet what that meant about him, but she walked a little faster. They reached the long canyon before the moon finished its arc west, and the temperature dropped the way it only does in desert dark, not gradually, but all at once, like the land had thrown off a blanket. Naira set the pace, and Cole kept it without complaint. He led the horse between them, and she noticed he positioned himself on the outside of the trail, the exposed side, the side where a shot would arrive first. She noticed and said nothing. The canyon narrowed after the first mile. The walls rose on both sides, close enough that the horse's hooves echoed, and she shifted to the soft margin of the path where the sand absorbed sound. Cole did the same 2 steps later. He learned fast. She gave him that. "The burial ground," he said, quiet enough that the canyon did not carry it. "What does Doyle think is there?" "Gold," she said, "or maps to gold. His man told him a story. And the story is wrong. There is no gold. There is only what belongs to my people." He was quiet a moment. "He won't believe that." "No," she agreed. "Men like Doyle do not believe in things they cannot sell." They walked another quarter mile. The canyon bent right and she slowed, reading the wall ahead. Limestone striped with dark mineral lines, a dry waterfall scar above them. She had been here once with her uncle when she was 12. She remembered the way the echo changed at this bend. Remembered how a person standing at the far end could hear you clearly if the wind was wrong. She stopped. Cole stopped too, immediately, no question. She held up 2 fingers and pointed forward. He listened. There, in the fabric of desert silence, the faintest irregular sound. A horse shifting weight on stone, the soft percussion of a hoof, ahead and above on the canyon rim. The thin man, not at Needle Gap, here. He had ridden ahead and taken the high route and was sitting on the rim in the dark, waiting for exactly this, for someone moving through the canyon below. She turned and looked at Cole. He had heard it too, she could see it in the way his jaw had set. She pointed up the left wall, where a crack in the limestone ran diagonal, a natural ladder she had used as a child. Then she pointed at him, then at the horse, then at the canyon floor in front of them. She held up 3 fingers. She pointed at her own chest. He looked at the crack in the wall. He looked at her. His expression said several things in sequence, the last of which was something she could not fully read but which was not resistance. He nodded. She handed him the horse's rein. The wall was cold under her hands. The limestone was rough enough to grip, and the crack was wider than she remembered, which made it faster. She moved in controlled bursts, 3 moves and stop, 3 moves and stop, her weight distributed so nothing scraped against rock. Below her she heard Cole begin to walk the horse forward, slow and deliberate, making just enough sound to be a person moving through a canyon, not enough to be a person moving with intention. The rim came up fast. She rolled over the edge flat and lay still against the rock, scanning, 30 yards east. The thin man sat his horse on the rim edge, looking down into the canyon, his rifle across his saddle. He had not heard her come up. The horse heard something, she saw its ears move, but the thin man was watching the floor of the canyon below. She moved in the silence behind him, low and patient, until she was close enough. She was on his right side before he felt the air change. She caught the rifle with both hands and pulled it sharply left while she shoved his arm up. And the combination of the angle and the speed, and the fact that he had not expected anything from the right side, took him off balance enough that the horse stepped sideways, and he went. With it and came down off the saddle in a way that was not graceful, and was not quiet, but was entirely controlled by her. He hit the rock and she stepped back with the rifle. He looked up at her. His face did the thing faces do when they rearrange the situation in real time. "I'm not going to shoot you," she said. "I'm going to tie you to your horse, and your horse is going to stand here until morning. Someone will find you." She used the rope from his own saddle. She was not gentle and she was not rough. She was efficient. When she climbed back down the crack with the rifle across her shoulders, Cole was waiting at the base of the wall with the horse and an expression she had no quick name for. "That's one way," he said. "It works," she said. They moved again. East now, Needle Gap 2 miles out, the sky beginning to show its first gray thoughts about morning at the far edge of the horizon. She thought about the burial ground, about what Doyle would do when the thin man did not come back tonight. About how much time they had before he moved anyway, map or no map, patience worn down to action. "You said you know some of this land," she said. "Enough," Cole said. "Have you ridden for any of the ranchers in this territory?" He took a moment. "I did not Doyle." "A man named Carver, North Range, 2 years ago." "Carver is fair," she said. She had heard her uncle say so. It was not common knowledge between their peoples, but it was not a secret either. "He is," Cole said. "That's why I don't ride for him anymore." Left when the territory got complicated. She understood what that meant. She did not ask him to be more specific. "What do you want?" she asked instead. "You came into that barn for a reason. What is yours?" He was quiet for several steps. The desert around them had shifted from black to blue-gray, the first announcement of dawn still an hour out. "Doyle killed a man last spring," he said. "Man named Pete Aldridge. Pete was a surveyor, mapped this whole region for the government. He had records that proved the burial ground and the canyon territory were legally protected under a treaty Doyle doesn't want anyone to know about. Doyle took those records. Pete didn't come back from the meeting where he was supposed to hand them over." She listened. "Pete was my brother's partner," he said. "Business partner. My brother has been trying to prove what happened for 8 months. He can't prove it without the records. The records are wherever Doyle keeps the things he doesn't want found." She looked at him. His face was forward, watching the path, but the line of his jaw said this was not a comfortable thing to carry. "You think I can help you get them back?" she said. "I think you know this land better than anyone Doyle will send after you," he said. "And I think if we move fast enough, we can reach the burial ground and the people protecting it before Doyle does. And I think there might be something there that helps both of us." She turned this over. It was not an unreasonable argument. It was also not a selfless one, and she respected him more for not pretending otherwise. "If the records are at Doyle's compound," she said, "we cannot go back for them tonight." "No," he agreed. "But we can make sure he cannot use the burial ground," she said. "We can make sure the people there know what is coming, And in the morning, when he rides out angry and short-handed because two of his men are out of the picture, he will make mistakes. Cole looked at her. Angry men with maps make mistakes, she said. Something in his expression shifted the way a door shifts when the latch finally releases. Not open, not closed, the moment just before. All right, he said. The gray at the horizon was spreading now, pale gold beginning to push up behind it. Needle Gap was 1 mile out. The burial ground was 3 miles beyond that. Her grandmother was in a village 6 miles north and by now had certainly sent the young men to search. She thought about that, about her grandmother standing outside before dawn, watching the trail, counting the time. She walked faster. Cole kept pace without being asked. The sunrise arrived the way desert sunrises always do, without apology, flooding the canyon in copper light that turned every rock face into something that looked valuable even when it was not. Naira reached Needle Gap with Cole 4 steps behind her, and the gap was clear. She moved through it fast, single file, the walls close enough to touch on both sides, and on the other side the land opened into the broad, shallow valley that led north to the burial ground and south to the flats. 2 of her people were there. She knew them. Young men from the village, her cousin Hinto among them, and the relief in his face when he saw her lasted exactly 1 second before it became the controlled expression of someone who has been running on fear for a night and is converting it to action. He looked at Cole. His hand moved toward his belt. "He brought me out," she said in Apache. "The rope was his work. He has his own reason for being here, and it does not conflict with ours tonight." Hinto looked at her for a long count. Then he looked at Cole, who had stopped where he was and was standing with both hands visible and his hat brim tilted slightly forward in the way she was beginning to understand meant he was paying careful attention without performing it. Hinto moved his hand away from his belt. Naira turned to Cole and switched back to English. "My cousin, he will take us to the elders. From there it is not my decision." "Understood," Cole said. They moved north. Hinto and the other young man flanked them, and she let it be what it was. Let Cole feel the weight of being the outsider in a landscape that had its own authority, because that weight was accurate, and she had no interest in softening it. The burial ground was on a low rise ringed by 3 old juniper trees, the graves marked with stones, and with carved wooden markers her grandmother had told her the words of when she was young. There were 4 elders waiting, and her grandmother was among them. Her grandmother looked at her the way her grandmother always looked at her when she came back from something, with an expression that made no distinction between relief and fury, the two living inside the same face at the same time. Naira stood in front of her and said nothing for a moment. "The clay is still at the creek," she finally said. Her grandmother made a sound that was not a word and pulled her close briefly and then stepped back and looked at Cole. He had taken his hat off. She noted that. The eldest of the council, a man named Running Waiter who had been old her entire life and seemed to have decided to remain old indefinitely, looked at Cole with the particular expression of a man who has seen many things come through his territory and assessed each one with the same unhurried accuracy. "You know what is in this ground?" Running Waiter asked. "No, sir," Cole said. "Only what I was told by the man who came for it, which I believe to be wrong." "It is wrong," Running Waiter said. "There is no gold, there never was." The man who sold Doyle that story was lying for his own reasons. Cole nodded once. "I have a different reason for being here." He explained it plainly, without extra words. "Pete Aldridge, the survey records, the treaty they proved, his brother 8 months." He did not ask for sympathy and he did not dress it up. Running Waiter listened without interrupting. When Cole finished, the old man was quiet for a long time. "We know of Pete Aldridge," he said at last. "He came here 3 times, he was honest. He showed us the records and he explained what they meant. He left copies." Cole went very still. "He left them with us," Running Waiter said, "because he said he did not entirely trust the people he was delivering them to. He asked us to keep them until someone came with the right reason to ask." The silence lasted. Insects, wind, the distant shift of the juniper trees. Cole's hands, still holding his hat at his sides, tightened slightly on the brim. He exhaled through his nose. It was the sound of 8 months landing all at once. Running Waiter looked at him steadily. "The question is not whether you have the right reason. The question is whether you have the ability to use them. Doyle has men and Doyle has connections in this territory. Records alone do not stop a man like that." "No," Cole said. But they can stop the people behind him, the land company in Denver that funds him. They can't afford to be connected to a murder and a stolen treaty. That's what my brother has been trying to build. With those records, he can build it. Running waiter looked at Naira. She looked back at him. She had grown up reading that face, reading the specific language of what it withheld. Doyle is coming, she said. Today or tomorrow. He lost 2 men last night and he is angry, and that makes him faster. If those records leave here before he arrives, he has no reason to come here at all. It was not quite true, and everyone present knew it. Doyle would come regardless. But he would come with less of a plan and more of a temper, and that was the difference between a man executing a strategy and a man arriving at an empty place and finding out his map was worthless. Running waiter looked at the sky. He said something in Apache to the other elders. There was a brief exchange, the kind that has already been half decided and is working out the remaining details. Then he looked at Cole again. If we give you these records, what happens to this ground? My brother takes the case to the federal court in Santa Fe, Cole said. The treaty protection gets enforced. Doyle's land claims in this valley collapse. He loses the legal right to any of it. And if your brother fails, Cole did not flinch from it, then we are no worse off than we are right now. Running waiter considered this for a time that Naira did not count, because counting it would have been the wrong relationship to the moment. Then the old man nodded. The records came out of a wrapped bundle from beneath one of the juniper trees, oilskin over leather, dry and intact. Cole took them with both hands and held them the way a person holds something they have been afraid might not exist. Naira watched him. Her grandmother came to stand beside her. In Apache, she said very quietly, "He moves like someone taught him to be careful of things." Naira thought about the hands on the rope in the dark barn, the thrown stone, the 2 visible hands, the hat brim. "Yes," she said. Cole looked up from the bundle and across the space between them at her. His expression was the same one it had been in the canyon the night before, not open, not closed, the moment just before. "I need to ride hard," he said. "North. If I push, I can reach the telegraph office in Clearwater by midday." "I know a faster route," she said. He waited. "Through the North Wash, past the Red Bluffs, down onto the flat, it cuts 4 miles. You'd show me." Her grandmother made a small sound beside her that was not quite amusement, but was a cousin to it. "To the edge of the flat," Naira said. "After that it is straight road and you do not need a guide." He nodded. He turned to running waiter. "Thank you, I won't let them be wasted." The old man looked at him with the same long accuracy as before. "See that you don't." They left with the sunrise full and blazing behind them, Cole on his dark horse and Naira on Hinto's horse, which her cousin had surrendered without much argument after her grandmother said 3 words to him that Naira did not hear clearly. She did not look back at the burial ground. She had done what she came to do. The clay was still at the creek, and the ceremony was still in 3 days, and there was a specific quality to the morning air that she recognized as the air of a thing resolved in the right direction. They rode together in silence that was not uncomfortable. At the edge of the flat, where the hard-packed road began and the desert opened wide and featureless ahead of him, she stopped her horse. Cole stopped beside her. "Straight north," she said. "You will see the water tower before you see the town." He looked ahead, then he looked at her. "Your name," he said. "I never asked." "Naira," he said at once, testing the sound, not making it something else, not fitting it to a shape he already knew. "Will you be all right?" he asked. She looked at him steadily. "I was managing before you arrived." "I know that," he said, and he said it in a way that meant he did. She turned her horse back toward the canyon. Behind her, she heard him move north at a canter, then faster, the sound of the horse's stride lengthening until the flat swallowed it. She rode back through the morning light. The clay at the creek bend would be settled now, perfect for shaping. The ceremony needed 12 bowls. She had made smaller things under harder conditions. She rode through Needle Gap and back into the Red Canyon, and the walls rose around her, and the desert resumed its long, indifferent conversation with itself. Somewhere to the north, a man on a dark horse was carrying 8 months of grief toward a telegraph and a courthouse, and whatever came after. She thought that Pete Aldridge, whoever he had been, had made a good decision about who to trust with his careful work. Some things you leave with the right people, and you trust the right person will eventually come with the right reason. She reached the creek before midday. The clay was exactly where she had left it. She took off her boots and waded in and got to work.